Hi guys, Olive here. Here today with my winter book haul. A fact that I am positive will not shock you is that over the past few months I have picked up new books. I've gone to some library book sales like I always do. I've also gone to some used bookstores. Recently I made out like a bandit in Half Price Books' clearance section. I found so much good stuff there, but I brought all those books into my reading room, added them to the ongoing pile of new books that I always have laying around here. And so now at the start of the winter season, I've gone through all of those books. I've plucked out the ones that remind me of the winter time, and I'm going to share those with you today. To start off this book haul, I will show you the small handful of fiction books that I've picked up recently. At a library book sale, I found a copy of Long Bright River by Liz Moore. I loved this author's previous book called The Unseen World. A copy of it is actually sitting on this middle shelf behind me somewhere. I loved that book, and I've been curious about this one since it came out. Apparently, it's about two sisters living in Philadelphia and how their lives are affected by the opioid crisis. This next one, I think, is the only book in this haul that I bought brand new. I got it at the Miami airport. My husband and I were stuck there the entire day, so of course I had to go into their bookstore. And I picked up this one. It's called Sweet Soft Plenty Rhythm by Laura Worrell. And technically, this one is about a jazz musician who has some toxic bachelor tendencies, but really, I think it's the women in his life that we follow throughout this novel. It sounded really good, and personally, being such a jazz fan, I am on a mission to find a jazzy novel that I fall head over heels in love with. This next book I got from the publisher. It was completely unsolicited. I had no idea they were sending it to me. It was just a very happy surprise when it showed up on my doorstep. It is called Aftershock by Zhang Ling, and this is a translated novel. Apparently, it's about the long-term ramifications of decisions that a Chinese family had to make in the midst of a natural disaster. For quite some time now, I've been very intrigued by Nutshell by Ian McEwan. I've had some mixed results with Ian McEwan's books in the past, but when I saw a copy of this book at a library book sale, obviously I have yet to completely de-library this book. Some of these stickers are so hard to get off, I'm going to have to really work at it. But it was pretty low risk. I think I only paid $1 or something for this. And apparently this is a retelling of Hamlet, except Hamlet, the character Hamlet in this story, is an unborn baby witnessing all the treachery from the womb. I remember this being a very divisive book when it first came out. Like, it's one of those love it or hate it kinds of books. But speaking of Shakespeare, since I just made a goals video for 2024 in which I was talking about an upcoming Shakespeare project that I'm going to be doing after I'm done with my Wishbone series, at the exact same library book sale that I found Nutshell, I found this gorgeous copy of A Midsummer Night's Dream. And a friend of mine actually once told me that this is a really good place to start with his work. But as I also said in that same goals video, my Shakespeare project is going to be about more than just reading the works of Shakespeare. That's the central focus, to be sure. But I also want to read works that pertain to Shakespeare. Things like Nutshell, of course, retellings such as that one. But I also want to read books more like this next one. It's called Chasing Shakespeares by Sarah Smith. And this is a novel in which a Shakespeare-loving grad student starts investigating claims made in this letter he discovered. That letter claims that a lot of the works credited to Shakespeare he didn't actually write. And I'm imagining my journey into Shakespeare is going to include a lot of things that investigate that particular theory. But that novel about a literary figure actually leads me very nicely into the start of the nonfiction section of this haul, because I picked up a number of books about writers. One of those is called Pushkin's Button, the story of the fatal duel which killed Russia's greatest poet by Serena Vitali. And this book is, of course, a history of the needless death of Russia's beloved poet. I also got Joy, Poet, Seeker, and the Woman Who Captivated C.S. Lewis by Abigail Santamaria. This is a biography of the wife of C.S. Lewis, who was a poet and an intellectual herself, and she actually helped refine a lot of her husband's women's work. And then I got a couple of books just about female authors. One of those is called In the Great Green Room, The Brilliant and Bold Life of Margaret Wise Brown by Amy Gary. And this is a biography of the woman behind Goodnight Moon, which is a book that I read to kids approximately 100 million times back when I was a nanny. I loved the cover of this next one, so I couldn't resist bringing it home with me. It's Virginia Woolf, a biography by Quentin Bell. I just love the art style of this one, and this is one I'm sure I'm going to want to pair with one of Virginia Woolf's novels. This next book I have to show you is a cookbook. And normally I wouldn't think to show one of those types of books off in a book haul. It's not exactly a traditional type of book, so I would kind of keep it to myself. But this one is literary inspired, so I thought it was appropriate to show off here. It is The Little Women Cookbook by Winnie Morinville. And this book is full of refined and yet still quaint home-style American recipes inspired by Little Women. There are some beautiful photographs in here and these adorable little illustrations. I just couldn't resist this. I also got one more book on food called Savage Feast, 3 Generations, 2 Continents, and a Dinner Table by Boris Fishman. And this is apparently a personal and family memoir about the author's upbringing in Soviet Belarus and how food affected his bond with his family. When I read the synopsis of this one, it reminded me so much of one of my favorite nonfiction books, Mastering the Art of Soviet Cooking. The author of that book, Anya von Bremzen, also has a blurb on the back of this book, so when I saw all of that, I nabbed this one. This next book also seems to involve food, at least a little bit. It's called Ritz and Escoffier, The Hotelier, the Chef, and the Rise of the Leisure Class by Luke Barr. This book seems to be a kind of dual biography of the 2 men behind London's Savoy Hotel. Then they later opened the Ritz in Paris. But in addition, it also seems to be a narrative history of these times and the scandals that followed these 2 men from London to Paris. Speaking of blurbs on the back of books, I find it very telling that they chose to include an Eric Larson blurb on the back of this one. But now let's move into the rest of the history books that I picked up. One of those is called Madam, the biography of Polly Adler, icon of the Jazz Age by Debbie Applegate. And in this book, the author talks about this woman who ran a number of brothels back in the 1920s and how she, ironically enough, had a pretty classic American success story. Next, I picked up a book called Dead End Gene Pool by Wendy Burden. This is a memoir written by a descendant of Cornelius Vanderbilt, and in this, she looks at the slow decline of her blue-blooded family. I don't read a ton about British history, but this next one really caught my eye. It's called The Watchers, A Secret History of the Reign of Elizabeth I by Stephen Alford, and this is a history specifically of Elizabeth I's Secret Service, who kept an eye on any and all threats to the crown, most notably the Catholic Church. I also got a couple of sports-related books. One of those is called Terror in the City of Champions, Murder, Baseball, and the Secret Society That Shocked Depression-Era Detroit by Tom Stanton. This book focuses on the city of Detroit, Michigan back in the 1930s, and how this very destructive secret society seemed to infiltrate all of Detroit's sports teams at the time, which all were becoming very successful simultaneously. I love reading about the 1930s. I think it's my favorite decade to read about, and I've never heard anything about this, so I'm really interested to dive in. But since the NCAA basketball season is now off and running, I thought I would show you this next one. It's called The Last Amateurs, Playing for Glory and Honor in Division I College Basketball by John Feinstein. And this one is admittedly kind of niche. Apparently in this book, the author talks about specifically the 1999 to 2000 Patriot League season in basketball. But according to a few reviewers, you don't even need to care about basketball to get a lot out of this one because it's the author's writing that really gives it its appeal. Apparently this author has that rare talent to make you care about this league, about the players, even if you don't really like basketball. And that alone makes me want to read this, but it helps that I also love basketball. All the remaining books left in this book haul are nature books or science nonfiction, and the publisher was actually kind enough to send me this next one. It's called What the Bears Know: How I Found Truth and Magic in America's Most Misunderstood Creatures by Steve Searles and Chris Erskine. This was actually one of my most anticipated releases of 2023. In this book, the so-called Bear Whisperer Whisperer discusses his experiences with these mammals. It was around this time last year that I read 2 different books on bears. I discussed them in a wrap-up video. I really enjoyed both of them, and I would love to read more about bears. I am in love with the title of this next book. It's called Geek Sublime: The Beauty of Code, The Code of Beauty by Vikram Chandra. This author is a computer programmer, but he's also a novelist. And in this book, he investigates the connections between the worlds of technology and art. And the final 2 books in this book haul are The Best American Science Writing 2010 and 2011. And these are edited collections of great science writing from their respective years. I already have the one from 2019 on my shelves. So now that I have these 2, I'm thinking I should probably keep an eye out for the rest of the 2010s, the ones from the remaining years of the 2010s when I'm out at my library book sales. So those were all of the wintry books that I've picked up recently, or at least the ones that I consider to be wintry. If you have any thoughts on these books, if any of them caught your eye, if you're now interested in reading them, or if you have read them and you want to share your thoughts, like are any of these more worth my time than others? Do you think I should prioritize certain ones? Would you like to see me review certain ones here in my channel? I'd love to hear any or all of that down in the comment section below. In the description box below, all of these books will be listed and there will be links there for you. It's all there for your clicking convenience. And at the very bottom of that exact same description box, you'll also see links to everywhere you can find me around the internet, like my Goodreads, Instagram, the Story Graph, all the places I'm the most active, in case you want to keep up with what I'm reading and doing right now. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.